Week 6 is here, and you need a starting quarterback. You're in a one quarterback league or super flex. Obviously, you're starting your stars, the Russell. Well, not really Russell Wilson, but your Patrick Mahomes, your Justin Herbert, your Joe Burrows. You have to start those guys. You start your stars. But maybe if you're in a league where you need a quarterback and they're on the bye, we do have bye week 6 week. As a reminder, the Lions, Jared Goff, the Texans, Davis Mills, the Raiders, Derek Carr, and the Titans, Ryan Tannehill. If you guys do have one of these quarterbacks and you need another quarterback to step up or that are in the waiver wires, these could be guys that you could start, or your streaming quarterback that you could be able to start going into week 6. So at number 1, Kirk Cousins versus the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins currently give the 4th most fantasy points to the quarterback position. This past week, the Miami Dolphins gave up 210 yards to Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson's second game back wasn't too bad. Kirk Cousins this past week against the Chicago Bears, over 295 yards, passed for 2 touchdowns, over 25 fantasy points. Kirk Cousins has been doing his thing right now. Been really consistent in the 22 yard or 22 fantasy point range for you. So if you are a streaming quarterback or you do need a QB2, maybe he's on the waiver wire somehow, if you can trade for him in a desperation play, not desperation, but if you just need a quarterback, I think Kirk Cousins is a good guy you can start going into week 6. At number 2, we have GENO Smith versus the Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals currently give the 8th most fantasy points to the quarterback position. Geno's been cooking. He's been doing his thing. He was like, I should have been the starter way before Russ did, or Russ was. That's all a joke, obviously, but Geno's been doing his thing. I mean, this past week, 286 yards, over 30 fantasy points, and he's been consistently going around the 20-25 fantasy points per game area. This past week, the Arizona Cardinals gave up 239 yards to Jalen Hurts and the Eagles. He had over 27 fantasy points. You can't sleep on Geno. If you are somebody that is struggling out of the quarterback position right now, and it sounds crazy to say, and we said this on our live stream, if you have Russell Wilson or GENO Smith, at the moment, we want to start GENO Smith. If you had Joe Burrow or GENO Smith, you could potentially make an argument to start GENO Smith over Joe Burrow. Like, these superstar quarterbacks that we all thought were going to be better this year, we're going to take the reins and say, okay, we're going to be starting these guys week in and week out. GENO Smith you could have an argument. Not saying he is better, not saying he is the guy. Just for the last 5 weeks, it's crazy to see how good GENO Smith has been doing, and I was wrong coming into the season. But if you do need a quarterback, once again, in a one quarterback league, if he's on waiver wires, or you make a trade, if you're in a super flex leagues, or you are streaming quarterbacks, GENO Smith could be a fantastic start in week 6. At number 3, I know it doesn't sound sexy, but Daniel Jones versus the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens currently give the 2nd most fantasy points to the quarterback position. And if you are in a deep league, I'm not saying, in a 10-man or a 12-man, not even a 12-man, maybe a 16, whatever league, or you have a super flex league and you do have Daniel Jones and you have a bye and he's either on the waiver wires or you can stream a quarterback, Daniel Jones could be a sneaky value this past week. Over 212 yards, 217 yards, over 12 fantasy points. Wasn't amazing, but the week before, against Chicago, 21 fantasy points. The week before that against Dallas, 15 fantasy points. The week before that, another 15. If you need an even 15 and you're struggling at the quarterback position right now and you are in desperation, maybe somebody's hurt, maybe you had a Trey Lance that was messing up. Maybe you had a Baker Mayfield somehow thinking that he was doing good, or Matt Ryan that was struggling. Maybe Daniel Jones could be a guy you can start over some of those guys right now in a desperation play. Once again, Ryan Tannehill, Derek Carr, all these guys, Davis Mills, are on a bye week right now. Doesn't sound sexy. And I know the Giants have been winning, and Daniel Jones has been protecting the ball and playing a huge part of that, and so has Saquon. But maybe this is the first time we can see Daniel Jones saying, we need to throw the ball more. Like, Brian Daboll is going to need to have to throw the ball more. This was the first time Daniel Jones threw for over 200 yards. I think this is going to be a pattern that we see. We have the Ravens, Jacksonville, Seattle, some tough defenses coming up here. So if you do need a desperation play or a guy that is on a bye, or once again, you are streaming the quarterback position, Daniel Jones could be a decent start for you going into week 6. Last but not least, we have Jimmy G for the San Francisco 49ers versus the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons currently give up the 10th most fantasy points to the quarterback position. It may not be sexy, but if you need a quarterback play because your quarterback is on a bye or there's something coming up and you have an injury, Jimmy G could be a guy that you can start. He did play the Carolina Panthers in week 5, 253 yards, 2 touchdowns, over 21 fantasy points. The Atlanta Falcons are currently just gave up 351 yards to Tom Brady. It would have been a lot more if, you know, Lenny and all these guys didn't run the ball in, to be completely honest. Lenny had over 30 fantasy points. But if Tom Brady, as always, threw those touchdowns, he would have easily had nearly almost, you know, 35 plus, maybe 40 fantasy points. He would have finished QB1 if Lenny did not run those balls in. Over 21 fantasy points this past week for Tom Brady. So if you are struggling at the quarterback position, I will be starting Jimmy G. As always, we love to give you our start quarterbacks, and now we have to give you our sit quarterbacks. And my first sit quarterback this week is Marcus Mariota versus San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers currently give the least amount of points to the quarterback position. This 49ers defense is legit, okay? This past week versus the Carolina Panthers held Baker Mayfield, the bad Baker Mayfield, to 7.6 fantasy points. The week before, they held Matthew Stafford, the reigning Super Bowl champion, to under 8 fantasy points. I don't know what more I can say there. Matthew Stafford, reigning Super Bowl champion, under 8 fantasy points. There's a lot to say there. I think you can just sit Mariota. Don't overthink it. He's going to be running for his life. Another week where they just lost to a team that they probably shouldn't have lost to a team that they weren't favors in. You know, like the Los Angeles Rams were favored in this game, and they lost in a bad way. So I will be sitting Marcus Mariota against the San Francisco 49ers. And last but not least, Cooper Rush. I am sitting Cooper Rush versus the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles give it the 4th least amount of fantasy points to the quarterback position. Excuse me. I know Cooper Rush the last 3 weeks has been doing his thing. Week 2, 15. Week 3, 14. Week 4, 21. He's 4-0 right now currently, and he just beat the Los Angeles Rams, which is crazy in my opinion. But I think this is a divisional game. This might be a little bit harder. He only had under 2 fantasy points, and maybe that was because their run game was very successful. Their defense really helped them out as well. But even if they say Dak Prescott's not ready, Cooper Rush is here and needed a quarterback play, I'm not starting Cooper Rush versus the Eagles. I think there's so much better quarterback play. I think the defense is going to play a big part. I think the run game has to play a big part in this game once again. And Cooper Rush probably will struggle. I think the chances of him getting more than 2 fantasy points is high, but the chances of him getting more than 10 to 15 fantasy points is very, very low in my opinion. So I will be sitting Cooper Rush going into week 6. Guys, as always, we like to say come by 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday. We will answer all of your start-sit questions. Still a lot of football to be played. Things can turn around. Anything can happen. Don't give up just yet. Please don't give up just yet. If you come to the end of this video, there's still a lot of time. Take your time, and good luck in week 6.
Yo, what's good? Thanks for watching. We got a lot more videos.
A lot more.
If you want more videos,
watch it.
You can also subscribe
right now
if you want to.
You need to.
And lastly, don't forget that you can sign up to support the show and get exclusive content by going to patreon.com/FantasyLand fam.